The government's passed that controversial social media ban for under-16s. Now, ever since this was announced, I've been asking myself, how can this possibly work? Now, the ban and the legislation's gone through the Senate. It won't actually be enacted until the end of next year, 2025. So I'm not quite sure what the 12 months in between is going to entail. Now, the government says, and I suspect what the government's done here, is they've rushed this through the Senate. It was in those guillotine bills. They've rushed it through so that they can go to an election campaign saying that, look, how great are we? We're going to look after teenagers. We're going to protect them from social media. We're not going to let them look at pornography. They won't be preyed on, bullied on. But will it actually work? Now, the ban apparently, and it's got huge reaction around the world today, particularly from the companies themselves, and the big companies like Meta could be fined $50 million if they don't comply. Well, the reaction's been pretty swift and fast, I must say. Made headlines right around the world, some good, a lot of it bad. In Britain, the Independent newspaper claimed the legislation, quote, sets Australia up as a test case for a growing number of governments. Now, as you know, X, formerly Twitter, their owner Elon Musk, he blasted the move last week, calling it a, quote, backdoor way to control access to the internet by all of us Australians. And Google and Meta want the legislation delayed. Well, the government has been slammed for how rushed this legislation has actually been. Submissions were only accepted for 24 hours. Debate on the bill, as we saw yesterday, was delayed until late Thursday night, I should say, right at the end of the parliamentary year. Now, it passed in the early hours of this morning, and unsurprisingly, it's also been quite an emotional debate. Now, I filled in for Andrew Bolt on the program last night, and I spoke to Barnaby Joyce, former Nationals leader and current Minister for Veterans Affairs. He said this is what he had to say on it. He was, I thought, quite emotional, actually.
This is about two people. One you don't know and one who's your daughter. The person making your daughter squirm, saying that they're fat, that they're ugly, that they should just kill themselves. Now, that's the evil I want to remove. And we have had a young girl very recently in the western suburbs of Sydney. She's dead. She's dead. She killed herself. And that's an example of so many others and of this sort of insidious. Now, why do these people not want to fix the problem that they're completely capable of fixing? And then you have to ask the morality of, say, hey, would you make money out of selling methylated spirits to an alcoholic? You know, would you make money out of selling heroin to an addict? Or why do you want to make money when you know some of the source of that money is the destruction of families and the destruction of individuals?
Well, clearly, off the back of that, Barnaby voted for the legislative change. There was some within the coalition who crossed the floor and didn't like it. But I'm now interested to know, how will this social media actually work? How will social media companies actually verify the age of users? I mean, I'm not technically at all astute. I can't understand how it'll work. We're joined now by tech expert Tim Stackpool, the techno bloke. Tim, great to see you again. How's this actually going to... I mean, we get to the end of 2025... we tell all Australian kids, and I found out today that even those that have social media accounts today, Tim, that would still be under 16 at the end of next year, they will be turned off. They won't be able to access those accounts. How's this going to actually happen?
There's going to be quite a few months, Steve, of research taking place. There's two companies involved in this, one an Australian company, one a British company known as a Scheme, looking into this age verification business. Now, what they'll do between January and March next year is they'll undertake research with about 1,200 Australians, and they'll be looking at different ways of doing the age verification. There are many different ways of doing this, Steve. We can talk about that in a moment. But the other thing is that after those first 3 months, a British company will come in, analyse all the data and make a presentation to the government about halfway through next year. And then the e-Safety Commissioner will then determine whether there's privacy issues which have been raised in looking for for the people's age to determine what the verification is going to be. And if that all gets cleared, then the government will enact it by the end of next year. So it looks as though the social media companies will have about 6 months from the middle of next year until the end of the year to be able to enact whatever it is that the e-safety commissioner says is strong enough to actually verify people's ages. Now, the big question is, the technical question is, how is this going to happen? Well, we do know that many social media companies now have limits on ages. Up to the age of 13, you aren't allowed to be part of Meta. Of course, that's Facebook and Instagram. And they use various methods. One, of course, is flicking on the webcam and looking at the user's face. And that uses a system developed by a company called Yachty. And that gets used in various other ways around the world as well for purchasing alcohol, for instance, at self-serve checkouts in many parts of Europe. It takes a look at your face through the webcam built into the automatic cashier. And if you do look over the age of 18, then you are allowed to proceed with the purchase. So they're going to use that similar sort of technology. They're going to test it anyway. Another way is perhaps if you own a credit card. And of course, verification and age verification has taken place previously in order for you to get the credit card. The issue with that is, of course, there are many people over the age of 16 who do not have a credit card as well. Looking at email addresses is another way. What is the activity that's been undertaken by the user's email address? Has it been looking up things like Peppa Pig or Paw Patrol? That's probably a giveaway that the person is well under the age of 18. And of course, the other way is using government-issued IDs. Now, this is a controversial one, Steve, because we're giving information issued by the government to non-government organisations. Now, social media companies will not be asking for that information, but third-party operations who then tell the social media companies that you are over the age of 16, they will get that information, but they will be obliged to destroy that information once your age, or at least being over the age of 16, has been verified, Steve. So there's various methods, and it could well be that more than one method, Steve, has to be employed before the age verification goes through.
Well, Musk says this is just a backdoor way of Australia limiting what can be published on X, Twitter, what usually was Twitter. And the critics say this ID that we might all have to have could be seen as a Trojan horse way of the government having access to our ID through social media, having to sign on. So, I mean, what the critics are saying is, well, everyone then will have to prove they're not under the age of 16, that they're actually over the age of 16, and will have to do that through some sort of ID.
Yeah, that's true, Steve. And certainly, even the age that both of us are, will have to prove, perhaps, that we are over the age of 16 in this case. Look, if we've had a Facebook or an Instagram account for more than, or at least 17 years, it's pretty obvious then that we actually, meet the threshold. But of course, MyGov would be a purposeful way, an easy way, I guess, to verify somebody's age. Now that's not being considered. That's off the table. So it's going to be a third-party organisation that we may have to upload our driver's licence to, or our passport front page to, Steve, the initial pages of a passport, in order to verify those details. But the social media companies will not receive that information. All they will get is the tick of approval from the organisation that has received our data. Now, the Australian Human Rights Commission, of course, have said quite a bit about this over the last month in their dispatches, Stephen, and they had concerns purely from a human rights position that although we're talking about children here, what we are doing is we're taking away the opportunity to be able to access a service which is ubiquitous to the rest of us. So even though it is about the protection of younger people in our community, minors, there still is a rights issue here too. So you are right in saying that it has been pushed through, it has been rushed. The other thing is, Steve, is that what Elon Musk has said perhaps is not the case, because we're not giving our information to the government, for instance. I think that would be serious if it happened in other countries as well, where the government wants to know the type of websites or services that we are trying to access. That would be of concern. Yep. That's not the case in the bill, in the legislation right now. We're not talking about governments receiving the information, but at the same time, we have to be cautious about who we're giving that information to, and making sure that those people can at least make the information anonymous or are compelled to destroy it, Steve.
Yeah, look, I think we've got a long way to go, Tim, and I just think we need to be careful. Tim, it's really good to catch up with you. Thank you very much for that.